Hi, everyone, and welcome to Book Club with Bay. I'm Bay, and this is Bay. Say hi, Bay.
Hi, Bay.
And today we're talking about Wild Card, the third and final book in the
Sorry.
something, in the spinoff, whatever, of
Cats
the Wildcats series, the romantic fan fiction spinoff
of Shifters.
of Shifters. So,
Yep. Ratings.
oh, God. Okay, this book was worse than the other ones.
This one felt like it kicked off really suddenly.
And like the pacing was weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, look, it's a billionaire romance with cats in a universe. Like, so the first, sorry, okay, let me back up. I apologize. I was in a car all day. I'm tired. So the first one in this series was like fine, and then this one, and then like the second one was like okay, and then this one is a billionaire romance set in a world that it doesn't make sense for there to be a billionaire romance set in.
This it's just weird. Oh, well, 1 sec, sorry.
You're fine. Well, like reading it, you're kind of just like, if you're gonna just do a billionaire romance, like why? Because the setup for him being a billionaire is weird. It's all very weird, and because it has to work around the lore that's already established, so therefore it's not allowed to make sense. I mean, look, not that billionaire romances ever make sense, but it makes way less sense in a universe that has up until now been kind of serious.
Yeah, well, we all know who we have to thank for this.
Yeah, apparently.
What was her name? Jennifer Lynn Barnes?
Yeah,
that's who we have to thank for this.
Yeah,
because she's, according to the last book, she's the one who pitched the idea of the billionaire stray.
But it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, though.
No, and like I have problems as well with like we know that although this book did clarify some of the questions we've had as well.
Yeah.
But we know, we've discussed that I'm dirty on her for like letting the DeCarlos just like their line will just cease to exist.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed about that. But also, I kind of don't like what she's done to Ed Taylor in this spin-off series, because he was our bud.
Yeah, he was.
And Brian as well. Like I don't mind what happened with Brian in the first book, but what's happened in subsequent books with Brian, because I'm not sure if you remember, but in the first book of Shifters, Brian, like Ed Taylor's daughter, is the one that Faith poses as.
Yes.
To protect her, and Brian is the one that is with her when they're walking from the house to the guest house, and they're a little team, and he was like their little bud,
right?
And now he's just a dick. Ed's just a dick. Like Ed is the new Malone, just less successful.
Right. And it doesn't really make sense either.
Yeah, like, I mean, if one of the allies was going to become a nemesis, Ed is the one that makes the most sense, because he was the one that was most iffy about, like, whenever someone was like, oh, I'm not too sure, like, in the alliance, it was always Ed. But
right.
But he was still our bud. Like, Faith saved his daughter's life. Brian was there, like fighting alongside Faith, like helping to protect her while she was posing as his sister. And now they're just dicks. You're our friends.
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
I don't know. I don't like what's happened to a lot of the characters, and this book was just weird. Like overall it was just weird.
Yep, she did correct Casey, the wrong shit she said about Casey in the first Wildcats book. They found Casey stuck in cat form again, like she wasn't eating a person in human form.
Right.
So she remembered, which is nice. We also know, because we brought up the map a couple times, and there's this big spot, blank spot. And we're like, what exactly is that? Why is that not a territory or a free zone? We find out what that is in this book. It's Thunderbird territory, so no cats at all allowed.
Right.
So I'm fine now. I'm fine with that big gaping hole in the map.
Yes. Yeah, because we're like, why is it purposely blank? I'm so confused. Like,
I mean, I still feel like she could have put up like big red diagonal lines going through it saying Thunderbird territory, do not enter. But at least we got an explanation why it was blank. So
yeah,
I was pleased with that. Did we haven't actually done our ratings though.
Oh, right. Fuck.
You know what? I feel like I was whelmed.
Yeah. It was mostly like, and honestly, a little underwhelmed, like kind of underwhelmed, yeah. I guess.
I mean, enough was happening to stop me from being like overall underwhelmed. But I wasn't overwhelmed in a positive or negative way. I was just whelmed.
Yeah, and as far as like the romance goes too,
sorry.
Yeah, I know. Like I've read enough romance books that like the formulaic billionaire thing is just like, if you're gonna do it, at least do a good job,
Yeah, and one thing that got me right. Let me just. I need to bring it up because the book starts with like a little heads up. Here's the thing, and here we go. It's where is it?
Oh yeah, the four. Like,
yeah, so
Rachel.
Yeah, so and because Casey's barely 18 years old, this one is more of a sexual tension book than an adult content book. And then we get to the scene where they almost do a bang, and I'm like, did you forget what you wrote at the beginning?
Yeah.
The only thing that made it more of a sexual tension book and less of a sexual adult content book is the fact that we didn't actually get to read the P going in the V. We got to go through all the foreplay though, and I feel like, you know what, at that point, meh. We're there.
Yeah, like
we're there. And the sexual tension part of the book is like literally just like, but we want a bone, and everyone else is like, but we have to keep you separated. Like there's none of the like when you read that something's going to be like the love romantic relationship in it is going to be more of a sexual tension thing, and you read it as more of like this dance, like that's what you're picturing. It's going to be this dance of these two characters,
and like kind of like forward, two steps back.
Yeah,
like, ooh, when are they gonna finally do it? And it's more just like
literally the only reason they haven't is because of circumstances.
Yeah.
I texted this to you as well, though. This book did have the most realistic line of dialogue I've ever read in a romance novel. So, I'm just, we're just gonna have to do the plot, and then I'll get to that as we get to it.
Yeah, like it's
because it's out of context. Out of context, so, like you need to explain the context first. But
yeah, exactly. But like
one thing.
We need to do food ratings. We haven't done that.
Human flesh.
Oh my god. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, like yeah.
We are Casey, starving and alone after our first shift into a cat.
Yeah.
And we find a dead hiker.
Yeah.
And we gotta do it.
Yeah.
There's no other choice. We had to do it.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. But one thing I was going to say to you before we went live as well, and then I was like, we'll just wait. Because this spin-off series is self-published, and it is obvious. It is very obvious. There's a lot of grammatical errors, like missing. Do quotes have a special name, or are they just speech quotes?
Quotation marks.
Yeah, so quotation marks are either missing or misplaced. A lot. I don't think she got this did she get this professionally edited? I really hope not.
I'm not sure. Let me look. Where's the copyright? Okay, there's no credit in the copyright. It's not always even there, so that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Oh. Wait, sorry, we have more to thank Jennifer Lynn Barnes for.
Oh, good.
It was also Jennifer Lynn Barnes' idea, who said, you should write a Wake Up in Vegas married story.
That doesn't make any sense, though.
It shouldn't have been a shift. If you want to do that, that's fine. Just don't do it as a shifters. I'm less mad at the grammatical stuff, knowing that it's more just a fan service. Like, you know, she probably didn't put a lot of like resources into it, because if she did, there'd also be audiobooks. Like, she probably just paid someone to do the cover art and that's it.
Yeah.
And the formatting. But I feel like she should have splurged and got it. Like, they're not long books, you know, get someone to edit them. But one thing that was a bit jarring, though, because we had to physically read them because there's no audiobooks, is a couple times in the previous books and in this one, there was like some, you know, when you want someone to like emphasize a word in a sentence, you italics it.
Yes.
She italics the completely wrong word in a sentence.
Yeah.
I can't think of an exact example that she's used because I didn't actually bookmark it, unfortunately. But it was like, you know, an example is like, don't you do that. But she would emphasize the do instead of the you or the that. So it's like, don't you do that.
Yeah, or like the don't. So like, don't you do that.
Yeah, like she would just emphasize the completely wrong word, and I'm just like, I don't know if like it, and because every time I saw that, I would sit there and say it out loud to try and work out if there was a way that I could make that emphasis not sound weird.
I just ignored it. But yeah, no, you're right, because like for some sentences, I would have, if I were writing it, I would have just italicized the whole sentence.
Mm.
And then, yeah, sometimes like, yeah, it was just like the wrong word which is weird.
Yeah, and like sometimes like it's one where it could work, but it's still a bit jarring. It's like, you know, I really want to go shopping, and but should italicize want instead of really.
Yeah, like I really want to go shopping
instead of I really want to go shopping, you know, which that sentence works.
Right.
So I wish she'd gotten an editor. It would have made it a less
that's
frustrating.
I think the difference between people who have publishers and people who don't, like, if your main thing is self-publishing, then at least usually, depending on how serious you are, you do all of that stuff. Like you get an editor, you get audiobooks done and all that kind of stuff. But I guess like if self-publishing isn't your main thing and you're just doing it for fun, because your friend was like, you should write about the cats, but fucking. And in ways that don't make sense. Then yeah, I guess this is what happens. Because there were also like some sentences that were just weird in general.
Oh yeah.
And like you said, I don't know of any specific examples, but there were just some like sentences that I was like,
yeah, what? Like one thing that
why are those words in that order?
Like one thing you want to do as an author, writing advice from Book Club with Bay, is you don't want to ever have, sometimes like one slips through, sure, you know, but you definitely don't want it to be a regular theme of your book where you have sentences that are just so jarring that it takes your reader out.
Yeah.
You want your reader immersed the whole time. So, and yeah, a lot of that is plot, pacing, characters, etc. But I think a lot of times, like, people underestimate, like when they're talking about, you know, how to write a good book. Just weird sentences should not be in your book. Unless it's dialogue. Like, you can get away with a hell of a lot more wrongness in your dialogue because they're people, you know.
Yeah, or like if it's first person, you can get away with some weirdness.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can just be having like inner monologue weirdness, which is fine as long as it's in the right context. But
if it's a sentence that like no one would even think as well in first person, like because you can have some snark in your first person in a monologue and all that, and you know, their own individual speech patterns, sure. But when it's just a really jarring sentence that, yeah, like you said, it's like, why are those words in that order? And you can't ever imagine anyone saying that sentence out loud.
Speaking of more writing advice from Book Club with Bay, and this is awful, this is awful to do, especially when your book is 180,000 words long, as Addie and I found out. But something you have to do is read the fucking thing out loud to yourself. Because the number of things that you will go over the book a bunch of times and not see anything, and you'll be like, that sentence is great. I'm amazing. I'm such a fucking genius, and I'm a wordsmith. And then you read the fucking thing out loud, and you're like, okay. we should do something about that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how even things that you have read over a bunch of times, the second you say it out loud, you're like, what?
Yeah, like, it's one thing that is in a lot of, like, books with especially ones with romantic subplots, like, the dialogue is fine for books, but then you hear it in audiobook, and you're like, yeah, I don't think you ever intended for anyone to say those words out loud.
So especially the dialogue, make sure you say it out loud. But even like the prose, you should read it out loud, because you'll pick up on a lot more weirdness than you would if you weren't reading it out loud. And I'll say this too, it is much more much more preferable to have a book like have a couple simple sentences than have like a long, mangled, crazy piece of shit. Like,
yeah, you don't. Only very few writers is it acceptable for you to have a paragraph long sentence, and those authors are generally, you know, in the league of Tolkien. You are not Tolkien.
No, yeah, no. Like, I wish, but no. And yeah, so it's kind of important that you read it out loud and that you just simplify things. Because also, if you're checking over your own work with like a thing like Pro Writing Aid, that'll tell you like, oh, this is written at like a 6th grade level, or something like that. I was like, we were like, ouch. And then I copied and pasted a bunch of Mercy stuff and chucked it in there, and it was like, this is also at a 6th grade level, and I was like, okay, we're good. Because I was like, what? I was like, oh no, and then I was like, all right, it's fine. So
honestly, because speaking of Mercy, sorry, we're going to do a Mercy tangent as we usually do.
Yeah. It's always either Mercy or House of
Because
Night.
I just finished re-listening to like all the Mercyverse books, and Patricia Briggs is a fucking artist. Like every time I re-listen, I just realize more and more. Like even like I was saying before the stream, so like there's a town that gets referenced in the book that had like it's a little know nothing town that used to have a mythology around it, and the town is wiped out now. That town existed and had that damn mythology.
Yeah.
Like she manages, like she does her freaking work.
She does her research. Like it's,
and the way that she's tied so many different storylines in ways that work and make sense and everything is just mwah.
Yeah.
It's oh she's a good egg. I am curious to find out what the chocolate Easter Bunny incident was, though. I feel like she doesn't know. I feel like she was just like, what's a random thing that Mercy prank? Like, what's a random thing Mercy could have used at a prank? Chocolate Easter Bunny.
Yeah, I don't feel like she knows either. Like, it's one of those things that I think was just a thing that she said, and I think it stuck, and I think it works. You know what? I think it's because it's kind of fun not knowing. Like what I want to know, but it's kind of fun not knowing.
I feel like I'd be disappointed if she told us.
Because I feel like my imagination is coming up with like funnier things than, you know.
Yeah. But she is a literary genius.
Yeah, she is. I can, I
have no shame in saying that an urban fantasy author is a literary genius. She's awesome.
It really is. And there's a reason why when I'm writing, at least, I listen to Mercy books while I'm actually typing. Like not while I'm typing, but like during that period where I'm actually writing stuff, I won't listen to like romance books or something like that unless it's like for book club. Because I've noticed that stupid shit will leak into my writing, and I'll be like, "Why did I write that sentence?" And I'll be like, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, I will.
Dumb shit.
I will say though, there is. I think you know which one. There is one series though that you could listen to for inspiration on what not to do when you're writing. Like seriously, I have come up with some really good plot point shit while listening to House of Night.
Yeah.
Because it's the perfect guide of what not to do. You know, like terrible writing advice.
Yes.
The channel.
Yeah.
It's that as a book.
Yeah, it's series. Yeah. And it's so long. Oh, you know what? On the way, because my boyfriend and I we went places. And on the way, I actually got into a 30-minute House of Night rant. And I was like, I could talk about this all day. Which he's heard most of already.
Yeah,
because of book club and because we'd never shut up about House of Night. But
Stixie doesn't let me talk about it anymore.
But I was like, you're gonna listen to me talk about it like for 30 minutes in the car, and you're trapped and you can't escape. So that was fun.
Where does he fall on the if you were a werewolf conversation?
No.
Same.
But only because, but not because of like, I don't think it's the same reason. He's just like, it's not possible, so it doesn't matter. And I'm like, but if it was.
He's partially like that, but he's also like, but also no. And then he'd be like, well, look, if I were to tolerate it, you'd have to sleep outside if you weren't human. And I'm like, you can't make me sleep outside. And he's like, I don't like animals in the bedroom. He's like, I don't like dogs in the house in the first place. Like, he wouldn't be allowed inside the house. I'm like,
see, we just didn't get that far because he just wouldn't human him for long enough. Like,
I tested him a lot, and just every so often I just keep going. Like, he's like, what's wrong? I'm just like, I just want you to love me if I was a werewolf. He's like, I don't think I could.
Advice from book club with Bay: how to annoy the shit out of your boyfriend.
He just He even went so far as to say he would take the children and leave me.
Oh.
I was like, why? And he's like, because werewolves are violent. I'm like, okay, fair, but also rude.
Yeah, right.
He's like, how do we explain it to the kids that mummy turns into a wolf?
Yeah, he won't even go that far yet. I say yet, because like at some point I'm gonna get him drunk and just be like, okay, so
would you love me?
Would you love me if I was a werewolf? I want a real answer, not just like I don't have to because it can't happen.
I even went into, but what if I was a really pretty one?
And just no.
And he just, I think it'd be sick. I think it'd be sick to be a werewolf. Like, I think seriously, like my favorite werewolf lore is Mercy.
Yeah, same.
I want to be a Mercy wolf. I don't want to be a Buffy wolf. Buffy wolf's a shit.
Yeah, I would want to be a Mercy wolf. That'd be fun.
What color do you reckon your wolf eyes would be?
My what? My wolf eyes? I don't know.
I feel like mine would probably still be blue.
Probably gold, I guess, because that's normally what brown eyes turn into.
Yeah, except for Anna. You could be an Anna.
Yeah, could be. I don't know if I'd get to be that special though.
I like, honestly though, like out of all the wolf colorings we've heard of, oh fuck, what's her name? The chick, the horse riding story, that chick.
Yeah, Chelsea.
Chelsea, because she's like all white with blue eyes, but she's got like the tan.
Yeah, and I'm like, with the tan underbelly and like the tan feet. I'm like, I want her. I want to be her.
Yeah, she'd look like a Siamese cat.
I know.
But a wolf.
I want to be a Siamese cat dog. Like,
that's what I want.
I want that. I would like to submit a formal request for that. For that coloring.
Yeah, that. I'm like, would you love me? No, I absolutely wouldn't, and it's just making me really sad.
I'm sorry,
but he also doesn't like dogs.
What if you're a werecat?
He doesn't like cats. He doesn't like pets. He'd be okay if we had a bird, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be a shape-shifting bird. Mummy.
Mummy. God. I hate Happy Night. I hate it.
Back to Wild Card.
We haven't even talked about it. All right. So the characters, let's just run through that. You got Casey, who we found her in one of the shifters book, one of the mainline shifters book, and she was younger at the time.
Yeah, she was like 13.
And so we found her, and she was stuck in cat form, eating people because she was a female stray.
No, she wasn't.
No. She was
a genetically recessive cat.
She was a genetically recessive kitty cat. And she turned into a cat and ate her family and then ate other people.
She just killed her family. She didn't eat them.
She killed them and then went around and ate other people.
You know what though? I am happy though that we find out in this book we got some closure about Daddy, because there is nothing sadder than picturing a man whose like wife and 2 daughters have just been killed because as far as he's aware, Casey's dead. There's nothing sadder than picturing like a man who's just lost his whole family.
Yeah.
But we find out this book that he remarried and has 2 little boys now.
Yeah.
So, you know, that good. he gets a relatively circumstantially happy ending. As happy an ending as he could have. He's got that. So, yay.
Right.
But yeah, so she's not long 18 in this series, because this series is I think it started about 4 years after Shifters, but we're now at about the 5 years after point.
Yeah.
Then we have It's Justice, this book here.
Yep.
So last book we had Titus Alexander and his brother Scratchadoodled and was he wasn't really the antagonist, but he was the person that we were looking for the whole book, and then and then he killed the antagonist last book. He's the guy this one.
Yep.
And then pretty much all the rest of the characters are ones that we already know.
Yeah. So.
I was not prepared for Paul Blackwell this book though. I didn't think that would happen.
Neither did I.
But plot. So Casey is bringing home a human guy that she's just met to fool around in the barn. She's not being a slut. She's still a virgin, which I'm really confused about because it sounded like the first book, she more or less told Jace without actually saying that she wasn't a virgin anymore, but turns out she is.
Yeah.
And she likes she brings human boys to the barn to make out, I guess, just to fuck with all the guys there because they all fall in, all the Toms fall into two categories. The older ones are like poor Casey, and they don't blame her for what she did when she was younger, but they're also hella old for her and view her more as a sister or daughter. And then the younger ones, the ones that she would ever have any sort of potential of liking, are creeped out by her because she ate people.
Right.
So she's in it. She's literally the only tabby ever that hasn't had any romantic prospects.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
It is sad. It is sad that everybody's terrified of her.
Yeah. But yeah, so she's hooking up with this guy in the barn, and then Mark's like, "Get out of here! I'm gonna tear you limb from limb." And she's like, "Dramatic much?" And he's like, 1, 2, 3, and the guy's like, "Ah!" And so he yeets. And Mark's in denial over the fact that no one wants to bang Casey. I guess not in that word, because the concept of her banging anyone just creeps him the fuck out. Because, she's more or less his and Faith's adopted daughter.
Right.
But he's just like, fuck, he's still a dick though. He's like, how absolutely dare you rub their noses in the fact that you don't want to be with any of them. And I'm just like, you have not changed at all, Mark. You have not changed. You are still a dick. You still think you have the right to tell literally anyone what they can do with their hoo-ha. He can tell Faith now, but that's because they're married, and I think it's a spouse's prerogative to ban other, partners in a relationship. That's fine. But he's a bit of a dick about Case. He's just like, no, how absolutely dare you? Like, what, Brian might want to bang you, and instead you're just saying, no, I prefer human men. And she's just like, Brian doesn't want to bang me, Mark. Like, he's creeped out by me. And then she goes and has a chitty chat with Faith, and Faith gets it. Faith is like, yeah, no, like they're dicks, but eventually someone's gonna love you, Casey. I promise. Eventually someone will.
Yeah, she's like, she doesn't say this, but someone loved me. And I am like the most unlovable person on the fucking planet.
And Casey's just like, but did you eat people? Faith, did you eat people?
And she has a point.
Because I did.
Casey has a point.
Yeah. Okay. Like, I'm glad that we got to. At the very least, I'm glad that Casey gets a happy ending. At the very least.
I didn't like the journey, but yeah.
Yeah. And then we switch over to Justice. Justice so this is 4 months after the last book. And so Justice is part of the South Central Pride, so he gets a trial for his actions in the last book. And he's decided he's going to run away because he overheard Vic. Oh, his trial's also now in like 3 days. Because Faith has now had the baby, and the baby's old enough where they're like, okay, it's time now. So he overheard Vic saying that he heard through the grapevine that they don't have the votes for the tribunal, and Justice is going to get. And Justice is like, well, fuck that noise. I'm out. So he decides to do an out.
Yeah.
So part of his plan for his alibi, like in terms of like trying to sneak out and prevent them looking long enough, is putting laundry on in the house. So they just assume that if they find him missing, he's just gone for a walk. Because he puts laundry on when they're about to run away, which I feel like that's probably sound.
Yeah.
But then he bumps into Casey, and Casey's like, oh, my heart's all aflutter. And he's like, oh, my heart's all aflutter too, but I'm about to be executed or go on the run, so it's inappropriate to do a thing. And then she's like, where are you going? And he's like, none of your beeswax. And she's like, no, where are you going? You're leaving. You got car keys. And he's like, I'm going to Vegas for a vacay. And she's like, me too, me too. He's like, no, not you two. And she's like, me too, or tell Faith. And he's like, okay, fine, you two. So then they go to Vegas.
Yep. Which the setup for that is so fucking weird. Like,
yeah. And all we know about their relationship at this point is she feels like he treats her like just one of the guys, you know. And he really enjoys watching Doctor Who with her, but old Doctor Who, like the black and white ones, because it's important to differentiate.
And it makes him more cultured if he likes the old ones and not the new ones.
Yeah, wait, is it Twilight Zone?
I forget.
I don't know. Old weird sci-fi. That's what they watch together. And he's like, she's so beautiful, but it'd be wrong because I've been on trial, you know, that's the only reason why I haven't made a move. And so they drive into the airport, and she makes
how
it.
old is he?
He's 20.
Okay.
He turned 20. He's 20 in 2 months because he can access his trust fund in 4 years and 10 months.
Okay.
As we get told multiple times. So they're driving, and Casey makes some comment about how she's so undesirable because she's a fucking freak. And he's like, pull the car over. And she's like, okay then. And she's expecting him to get out and walk because, you know, she's gross. And then he just leans over and starts making out with her. And she's like, why would you do that? And he's like, because you're beautiful and you deserve to know it. And thus begins a weird relationship.
The relationship's so fucking weird, dude. It's so weird.
Like we got at least had like a few chapters of like Jace and Abby both being like, I want to, but I can't, but I want to, but I can't, you know. There's at least, you know, that, whereas this one was just like, you know, he was like, oh yeah, she's hot, and she was like, oh yeah, he's hot, and then they just start making out.
This is supposed to be a sexual tension book. I'm like,
yeah,
bitch, where?
Yeah. And then by the time they get to either the airport or land in Vegas, everyone knows. Everyone knows that they're missing together. Yeah. One weird thing though that doesn't line up with this is she brings the guy home and it's 10 p.m., right?
Right.
And his flight's in like either 2 or 3 hours. So that's either midnight or 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And they get to the airport and there's a shit ton of people, like when they land in Vegas, there's a shit ton of people waiting to board the plane that they just unboarded.
Like, unless they landed at like 6 a.m., I guess.
Maybe.
Because that would make sense.
How long does it take to fly from Houston?
I mean, not that long. I guess it just depends on when his flight is.
His flight was either at midnight or 1 a.m., which I didn't think that flights... I mean, at least here flights don't go that late. Like, you can't get like a 1 a.m. flight.
It depends on the airport. Like out of Atlanta, you can get flights that are that late. It's very specific, but it's very specific ones.
Okay, so I'm looking at this. Okay, so with time zone differences, because it's saying that it's a 3 hour, 10-minute flight, but when you look at the leaving and landing times, because they're in their respective time zones, it's an hour 15 later, adjusting for time zones. So if the flight leaves at midnight, they landed at 1 a.m. in Vegas.
Right.
Which I don't feel like leaves them enough time to do everything they do that night.
Yeah, no.
But
and
anyway,
also like red eye, because that would be a red eye at that point. Red eye flights are not busy. Like red eye flights are actually pretty fun because they're really not busy. But also Vegas is not the kind of airport that would have like a busy overnight shindig going on. Like Atlanta, LAX, maybe Chicago, but definitely like JFK and LaGuardia. Those would be the three where you would have a lot of activity overnight.
Yeah,
I know these things.
They also, I'm just having a look. It doesn't look like they have any flights that leave past 8:54 p.m. So,
yeah, like,
but
hold on, let me.
I can forgive the unrealistic part of the flight time, but I just don't feel like there's enough time for them to have done everything that they did that night. Because he goes and gambles for hours.
So, looking at Atlanta to LA, just because I was curious, like, what kind of flights you can get to LA, because Atlanta to LA is like the busiest. One of the busiest things. You can get a midnight flight out of Atlanta to LA. But it's not like, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it's not a whole lot though, because that's usually like a time where they deal with layovers and they deal with like switching out planes for fucking international flights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
midnight flying is not a common occurrence.
Yeah. So
but anyway, time issues aside, they land in Vegas. Casey realizes that he's not there for a vacay, he's going on the run. And she's like, well, what are you gonna do? And he's like, well, I'm gonna go and do some gambling so I can pay in cash for everything, because he maxed out his cash advance on his credit card. It's like, so I'm gonna go do some poker because I have a fake ID, and I don't have a fake ID for you, but you can go and eat shrimp. There's lots of all-you-can-eat shrimp buffets here in Vegas. It's kind of what it's known for. You can go and do this, you can go and do that. And she's like, okay then. So then he decides to lose most of his money because he saw Casey rejecting a guy. He's like, I don't want to be here playing poker, I want to be with Casey. And then we find this out later though, because she wakes up. Then it's the next morning. She wakes up and she's like, what happened last night? And he's like, you don't remember? And she's like, no. And then she sees a giant freaking rock on her finger and she's like, what the fuck happened? And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, we got married last night. Which, there are so many issues with this. Because, then we find out that, and she can only remember some bits and pieces. They talked a lot. They made out for a bit. She tried to beg him for sex, but then she threw up and passed out.
But the issue with like, oh, we got married. So here's how actually getting married in Vegas works, okay? In order for you to actually be married, you have to have a marriage license. So, like, Bay and I could go get married in Vegas and still not be legally married.
Wait, just because I know that marriage licenses are same day in Vegas. I'm just wondering if they have, like, you know, an all-nighter thing where you can get one. I feel like this is a bit of a mistake and no blood test is required to get a marriage license in Nevada.
Is it like a 24-hour thing? But also, like, you have to go do a separate thing.
No waiting period. Couples may marry immediately after obtaining their license.
But, like, you have to still go to a thing to do the thing.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if you can get a thing in.
And but my point is, like, unless you actually, like, because I don't know, because I'm pretty sure whatever Elvis shindig you went to can't distribute marriage licenses.
Yeah.
So unless he's implying,
you can apply for your Las Vegas marriage license online. Okay. So they could have done it.
So drunk as fuck, they were like, let's not only
no, because he was sober the whole time, right? And when she, because she remembers later she proposed to him. When she proposed and when they got married, even though she can't remember any of this, she had not started drinking yet. And I'm like, that is not how alcohol blackouts work. You don't forget the pre-drinking stuff.
No, you forget the drinking stuff. So they're both sober. Okay, so maybe so you know what? Maybe they did go to a courthouse and fucking whatever.
Because she even says as well, like, we'll get it annulled because I was incapacitated by alcohol. And he goes, but you were sober.
Then how doesn't she? Okay, but then the other thing is that, like, so as much as cute as it is in movies, it's if you actually go to Vegas to get married for real, or you get married in Vegas for real, it's not as easy as it just being a spur of the moment thing.
You need to go online and apply for that shit.
Yeah, so, like, even, like I said, even if Bay and I were to go pay.
Perhaps the chapel does that for you. Like, they go through and do that for you as well. I don't know.
I don't know. But, like, if we were to go pay for a ceremony, that doesn't make us married.
No, you need to get the license.
Yeah. Which is how people do bromance wedding ceremonies in Vegas.
Yeah.
Which they're hilarious. They're great. But, like,
you know what's kind of sweet though? Like, we find out later that she proposed to him and, like, he still had enough money to, like, go and buy their rings and stuff like that. He bought her, like, an $8,000 engagement ring for their, like, half-hour-long engagement.
I want that kind of fuck you money.
But yeah, she's freaking out and she's like, wait, because then she's also like, oh, we can get it annulled because we didn't have sex. And he's like, well, no, that's actually, turns out I looked it up. I don't know. I think in some states you can annul a marriage if it hasn't been consummated.
Mm-hmm.
But in Nevada, I looked it up when this happened because he was like, I think that's only a movie thing. In Nevada, the only reason that you can get an unconsummated, like, or the only reasons relating to non-consummation that you can do is one of the spouses hid their lack of desire to consummate the marriage, or the man's impotent.
Just say he's impotent then. Like,
and so in this scene, let me bring this up.
That's hilarious.
Wait,
the logistics of this book make no fucking sense.
Okay, so we're not in Vegas yet. Okay. here we go. So she's just realized there, whatever. And yeah, so it turns out the reason that they got married is because he can't access his trust fund until he's 25 or he gets married. So they got hitched to the money. And she's like, how could you do that to me? He's like, it was your idea. Actually, he didn't say that because he didn't want to tell her that she proposed.
Right.
But he was like, no, the money was for both of us. And she's like, what the fuck? And where is the okay, so we're going through all the thing. She's like, wait, there it is. I unplugged my phone and handed it to him. He's like, that says impotence. I am not impotent. And then she goes, it says we can ask for an annulment if one partner intentionally concealed impotence or an unwillingness to consummate. And we are now approaching the most realistic line of dialogue in a romance novel. I'm perfectly willing to consummate. He grabbed the hem of his t-shirt. Should I take this back off? We can consummate this bitch right now. And I'm just like, I legit could see a guy.
Yeah, like that is the most
realistic
thing that has. Okay, like so props for that. That is the most realistic thing that's ever been said in a romance novel. Because like,
let's consummate this bitch right now.
Because like I'm thinking about like my boyfriend, and like that is absolutely something that could come out of his mouth.
Especially when the immediately previously words spoken were like about impotence. Like fuck this, let's do this. Let's
fucking go.
And then Casey's like, but I'm not willing to consummate. And he's like, well, I'm not going to ask for an annulment over that. And she's like, yeah, but I can. Because it doesn't say that I can't file against myself. So he's like, no, we can't. And then it becomes a plot point later in the book that he can't access his trust fund until they bang, because then they're not properly married until they bang. And I'm like,
who's there to prove it though? Like,
but also, if lack of banging in and of itself is not reasons to annul a marriage, because the marriage is still, it's not unvoidable, because that's what that's one thing I discovered. Annulments refer to whether or not a marriage is voidable.
Yeah.
And fraud and stuff can void a marriage, therefore you can get an annulment. If you can't void a marriage based on just lack of consummation for no reason other than the fact that the two of you haven't yet consummated, then the marriage is valid. So you don't have to bang to validate the marriage.
Because it's legally valid. But I still want to know how they had the wherewithal. Well, I guess because they were sober. But like, can you show me a scene of them just going to like www.getmarriedinvegas.com and like applying for the marriage license? Like, yeah, we should do this. This is totally spur of the moment, though.
They're out picking rings, and he's like, "Hey, hang on, do you have free Wi-Fi?"
Yeah, he's like, and Casey's like, "Shit, I don't know my social security number," and.
But yeah, so then they decide that she's going to go back home, and he is going to, because he's like, we can run away to an island together and we'll just island for the rest of our lives. And she's like, but I don't want to. She's like, I want to, but I don't want to. You know, like, this is ridiculous. Yesterday I had never kissed a werecat, and now I'm married to one. What the fuck? Type thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she's gonna go home. He's gonna yeet, and they get down to the lobby, and Vic, who is Mark's best friend, Chris, another one of their enforcers.
Mm-hmm.
Who I guess we haven't met Chris up until this point, but he doesn't really have, He exists. That's more or less what we know about Chris. He exists.
Yeah.
Chris is there, and then there's this other guy who turns out, because they acknowledge that they are in Blackwell's territory. It's fine. But Blackwell's grandson, who is also an enforcer, is there. And they're like, it's you. And they're like, run. And then they try and do a run, but then they get a caught. And Vic is like holding Justice, and Justice breaks his hand. And he's like, sorry, man. And then they're like, we're going to take you away. And he's like, I'm going in the same car as Casey. And they're like, no, you're not. And he's like, yes, I fucking am. So then they put Casey in the front seat and him in the back seat, and then they're having a chat, and because it's really hot, they leave the driver door open. And then Casey, being a sneaky little bugger, climbs over into the driver's seat, yanks the keys out of his pocket, and just drives away.
Yep.
And Justice is like, what the fuck are you doing? And she's like, I'm getting out of here. And he's like, this is really sexy. And she's like, don't you dare call me sexy. How absolutely dare you? And so then, they get away. They decide to go hire a car using his credit card and say that they're going to go to one airport instead of a different airport that they're actually going to throw them off this, to throw them off the sun. I don't know. But then they're like,
cash. Oh my God. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure I can leave a big enough cash deposit. Oh, he doesn't have the cash though, because he spent $8,000 on a freaking engagement ring that he didn't need to buy. I mean, sweet. That was really sweet of you, Justice, but she proposed to you. You don't need to buy her an engagement. And you were engaged for literally half an hour before you tied the knot.
Yeah.
Just two simple, plain bands would have sufficed. Which I feel like is what most spur-of-the-moment Vegas weddings consist of.
Yeah.
Just two plain bands, because you didn't factor in an engagement ring into your travel plans.
I don't know.
But then they go to a motel to do a thing, I guess. And Casey apparently makes sex sounds when she eats dessert, which I would be very comfortable spending the rest of my life not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? There is, and it's not just, I just can't stand noisy eaters. Like, there is the occasional, I think we all have the occasional moment where we have the most divine piece of food we have ever had in our lives, and we're just like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
But not with every bite of dessert.
Yeah, right. You don't need to face fuck the dessert. It's okay.
Because he's spoon feeding her dessert on the bed, because they're having a bed dessert picnic. And she's ordered 3 desserts, and one's like a cheesecake, one's a tart, and one's something else. And she's just in with every single bite. And I'm just like, this isn't normal.
No, it's not.
I would never want to eat anywhere near Casey if she's a moany eater. Because the next morning as well, when she has her waffles, she's trying to contain her moans of pleasure from her waffles.
Maybe she's just that happy that it's not a person. I don't know.
I don't approve of moany eating. I mean, I also don't approve of other kinds of noisy eating, like lip smacking, and so I think I could live with the moaning more than the lip smacking, because the moaning's just like, can you stop? Whereas the lip smacking's like, ugh, But just eat quietly. Life advice from Book Club with Babe: be a quiet eater.
Also, it's not, I don't know, it's not sexy. You know what I mean? It's just, it's weird.
Wait.
Unless you're, I don't know, deep throating.
I'm going to consult. He pulls.
Are we consulting the boyfriends on this?
Yes.
What are we asking? How am I asking?
Is Moni eating attractive? Babe, I have a question.
Yeah.
If I was to start moaning with every bite of food,
Yeah.
would you find that attractive?
That'd be a bit weird.
What if it was only with desserts? But with every bite.
I'm just thinking of that scene.
Is that sexy? Is that sexy or is it weird?
It's weird. You just made me think of that scene from The Matrix. The second one.
I didn't watch the
The
second
girl
one.
eats the ice cream and they fucked with the code and she has a bite of ice cream and has an orgasm.
That was all. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know if it was sexy or weird. From a guy's perspective, okay, it's weird.
I'm asking mine, but he's just very confused. And I'm like, like if I was like moaning when I eat a dessert, is it sexy? And he was like, why? I was like, book club question.
I feel like he thinks it's weird if he's wanting a reason why.
Yeah, he's like, fucking what?
Like, have you been withholding this from me for how long?
He says no. He says, no, it's not sexy. So definitively, he said I would give you the weirdest look. And okay, so definitively,
It's weird.
love advice from Book Club with Bae. Don't try to face
seduce a man
while you're to attract a man. It doesn't, apparently, as we have been informed, it's not sexy.
Yeah. Again, the occasional you are eating like the most delicious food you've ever eaten in your life. For the first bite, you can like make a sound of appreciation. That's it.
That's all you get. That's the
I
only
think that
period.
because I can't, like, I don't know, like, it doesn't happen often, but occasionally you have like that one bite of food that's just like, yeah, a bit of an orgasm in your mouth.
Oh yeah, like we went to a pizza restaurant at one point, and or it was an Italian restaurant, but they were mostly pizza. It's like some of the best.
Most Italian restaurants mostly pizza.
I mean, it depends on like the kind of Italian.
Yeah, true.
But like, so it was one of those. It's like specializes in pizza, and it was like the best pizza I've ever had. And so, and it's like on the first bite, you're like, fuck yeah, that's like amazing. But like around, but then like you stop. Yeah, there's not. You're not making animal sex noises while you eat.
Yeah, you're not just moaning around your spoon. Well, you don't eat pizza with a spoon, but if you did, you wouldn't be moaning around your spoon with every bite.
So
yes. Unless you're tasty. So
you're tasty.
Yeah. So then the moaning was too much for him to bear, and then they start making out. But they don't do bang yet. They don't do bang this whole book, okay? They're about to do bang when the book ends. Spoiler alert. Yeah, so they I think they round second base.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. And then the next morning they're like, okay, well, we gotta go and keep on traveling to Denver because they're in the middle of the Thunderbird zone right now. And so they're like, let's go to Denver. And so then they start, Justice is like, I'm going to go check out. And so then while he's going to go check out, Casey gets kidnapped by Jared, whose car they stole the day before. Because they left it for him. Because they were like, look, we don't want to be dicks. We'll leave him his car. Well, he got his car, installed some plexiglass, and chucked her in the backseat. And Justice comes out and he's like, no! And then he's like, hey, you! Where was the thing? And he was like, there was no one else, but there was a car. What color was it? I don't know. It might have been green or red. And he's like, was it blue? And the guy was like, yes, it was blue. And it's just like, okay.
It might have been green or red, but it was blue. Okay.
Like, and it wasn't like, yeah, I forgive like characters in stuff that are confused about the color when it's like that really dark, like when it's a really dark shade that's, about 5 shades from black.
Yeah.
Like really, really, really dark red that like the light has to hit it in a certain way.
Right.
And your brain looks at it and it processes that it's not black, but it doesn't necessarily pick up on the actual color that it is. I forgive that. This was a bright blue Honda Accord.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can't really confuse a bright blue Honda Accord with a red car.
Yeah.
But he does. He does. And then Justice like, okay. So if I go south, that'll take me back to thingy where if he's doing council business, or work, if it's on his grandfather's orders, he'd be going south. But what if he wants to do a raper doodle or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
He'd be going north. It's like, I don't know what way to go. I'm thinking, has he ever done anything that gives you any sort of indication that he was a dick to you yesterday because you're a criminal.
Right.
That doesn't I would have just started traveling south. Because I feel like the wreck would have been avoided if he'd just gone south from the get-go, because he wasted about 15 minutes waiting for Mark to get back to him. So he calls Mark and he's like, I need to know if he's doing this officially or not. And Mark's like, I'll get back to you. Mark's mad at him, by the way, because they also all know that they're married now. Mark's like, how dare you marry my Casey? And he's like, dude, she's been kidnapped. Like, can marriage lecture later, please? And so then Mark calls back. He's like, oh yeah, no. They're charging her with treason. You need to get to her before she gets back into the territory, because then you're breaking the law by retrieving her, but I'm making you a temporary enforcer and blah, blah, blah. So then he's like, okay, I've got to get to Casey before they get back to Southwest Territory. So then he's like, yeet, and goes down the road. And there's I honestly, by the time he got to he was speeding down this road for 2 hours, I'm like, this isn't a fun car chase scene.
Yeah.
If this was in a movie or a TV show, it would be pretty boring.
Right.
But he I don't know. Okay, I don't know how you can be gunning it down the highway for 2 hours and not either catch up with them or have you both be pulled over by cops by this point.
Right.
But they're going. They're back in Nevada, but not back in the territory yet. And then we go over to Casey. And Casey's like, let me out. And he's like, no. And she's like, yes. And he's like, no. And then so she starts kicking the plexiglass. He's like, don't you do that. And she's like, no. And then she cuts her hand and starts writing on the back window, help.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you don't do that. You don't bring humans into WereCat business. She's like, well, I fucking do. And he's like, no. And she's like, yes. And then she does a thing and then the car crashes and goes rolling through the desert. And they both hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
Casey manages to get out of the car, and then she yeets across the desert. And cars are starting to pull over. Jared is not unconscious, but he is stuck. Then Justice pulls up just as, he sees the car go off the road. And so then he pulls up and he's like, I'll go down. Everyone else stay back in case it explodes, because he wants to find out where the fuck Casey is. And then so he gets down there. He realizes that Jared's stuck. He pulls him part way out. His knee's dislocated. And he's like, where's Casey? And they're like, I don't know. And then someone calls out, oh, there was a girl as well. And she ran that way. And he's like, I'll go get her. Someone else get him. And then so he gets, it was I think it was meant to be a really high tension thing. And I'm just like, can we just find Casey already?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're back to Casey and she's become a cat.
Right.
She's like, I need a shift to do a thing. And we realize that, she's still deeply traumatized every single time she does a shift, which I don't feel is very consistent with Casey from Shifters.
It's really not.
Because when she didn't want to shift for a long time, which granted, but then she finally shifted and she spent as much time as she could in cat form for a while after that.
Yeah.
Which is how she got the nickname Whiskers. Because she was, a cat a lot and rubbing her whiskers up on everyone. But apparently, she's the pain is all representative of all the bad stuff she did when she was the first time she was a cat. And then she climbed a tree and then Justice finds her and he's like, oh, look, there you are. And he's all relieved. And then they get in this car and he calls Mark and he's like, I got her. He's like, okay, well, Vic and Chris are coming to meet you and you're coming home. And he's like, okay. Then they get to the hotel room and Casey shifts back into people. They give her a bath, do some first aid, have some food, and then they're about to bang. Like they get to like the P's hovering over the V, and there's a knock on the door, and I'm like, well, you two spent way too much time on foreplay. If you wanted, like, you knew that they were going to be there in an hour. If you spent an hour on foreplay, this is your own fault.
Yeah. Also, how do you? Okay. Like, I feel like unless you're on something.
Well, they spend like a decent amount of time having a chat about whether or not they were ready to do fuck as well. And I'm like, you're on a time crunch.
But also, like the idea of spending an entire hour on.
Well, because you also put out there, oh, by the way, I'm still a virgin. He's like, how? So they had to discuss how she was still a virgin for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so then, like, I get that he wanted to try and, make it as not awkward as possible. But when you're in a time crunch and you just want to get the fuck going, like I'm not against foreplay. Foreplay is fine. Foreplay is great. It's expected.
Yes, you should.
To an extent.
But good Lord.
Like, if I've got like 10 minutes, fuck the foreplay. Fuck it. We've got 10 minutes. But no, so they wasted all their time, and so they didn't get to do fuck. And then they go back to the ranch.
Right back.
Okay. Also, during this whole thing as well, Casey is also like, because on the tribunal is Victor Carlos, and he's going to vote most likely to acquit Justice because he was looking after Robin, and he knows firsthand that strays have quite a traumatic time. So he's like, yeah, fair. And Paul Blackwell is on there, and they know that he is, no matter what they say, is going to vote to convict. And the other one is Ed Taylor. And they're like, okay, well, we need to just try and convince Ed to vote to, what's the word? Acquit. And so Case has been calling him as well to be like, you need to understand that he went through trauma. And he's like, well, that's not acceptable. And she was like, well, it's acceptable for me to kill people. And they're like, and he's like, well, that's different because, you were young and traumatized and didn't know what was happening. And she's like, oh, that sounds exactly like what Justice did. And he's like, and she's like, you kind of have a bit of a double standard, all that stuff. So they're trying to make it work. But, they're not convinced that they can convince Ed to at least be fair. But they go back to the ranch, and everyone's working hard to keep them apart. Faith isn't being too unfair about it. She was like, look, I get it. You think you love him, blah, blah, blah. And Casey's like, well, no, I actually do. And they're all just like, you're too young to be married. And she's like, well, that's not up to you. That's up to me. And then Titus rocks up, and he's like, grr, how could you have done this? And Justice like, dude, she's my wife, because he's been a bit of a dick to Casey. Although I didn't see him as being a dick to Casey, but apparently he was being a dick to Casey. I don't know. I just feel like, he rocked up and a lot of stuff had happened, and he was like, I didn't read Titus as being a dick to Casey when they got there. When Titus and Robin rock up at the ranch.
Yes.
And he's not necessarily friendly to Casey, but he's just a bit, like, I need to talk to my brother.
Right.
And she's like, and Casey's like, oh, I've met you before. And he's like, yeah, back when he's like, oh yeah, I remember, you were still in high school. And that's all he says to her.
Yeah.
And then when he's like, I need to talk to Justice, and Justice is like, you need to be nicer to my wife. And Casey's like to Robin, he hates me. And I'm like, he didn't do anything. Okay, he's trying to do a thing, and then he gets a phone call saying, oh, by the way, your brother's taken off without Tabby. Oh, and by the way, they're married now and this and that, and they're trying to flee the country. Of course he's not going to walk in and go, Casey, welcome to the family, sweetie. He's going to be like, can you fuck off so I can talk to my brother and find out what the fuck's going on? And he didn't even do that. He was polite.
Right. Like, I would have done that. That's what I would have said to her, but...
Yeah, he was just like, Faith, can I please talk to my brother alone in your office? And Casey's just like, he hates me. And it's like, oh, he's pissed off at his brother.
Like, he might be pissed off at his brother, but, like, you know.
And then...
would run off with a teenager.
While he's on trial for murder.
Like, it's, you know.
Like, I think Titus's response is fair.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Titus is like, well, what did you want me to say to her? I said hi.
Also,
and Justice is like, you could have congratulated us. And he's like, is that really your you're going on trial for murder in 2 days, dude.
Also, like,
2
one thing
days.
that I didn't think about, but now I'm thinking about it. If he's not 21 yet and they went to Vegas,
yep.
where the fuck did they get alcohol?
Fake ID. He has his fake ID.
Okay. I forgot. Like, I didn't look.
And I think they were drinking up in the hotel room. So he just ordered a bottle to the room. So I think... because also just before Titus walks in as well, we get the phone call about Paul. Paul Blackwell, bless his soul, has died.
Yeah.
And so his son-in-law, Robert Taylor, who is Ed Taylor's brother and Jared's father.
Yes.
He is now alpha of that territory, and it's like, wow, like I didn't think that she'd kill Paul Blackwell in series. Because he's just always been like this figurehead of just like the oldest fuck you've ever seen alive refusing to retire.
That hits different right now. Oh my god, sorry.
Huh?
So that hits different right now.
Mm.
That because I don't know if you heard, but Ruth Gator.
Oh yes.
Ruth Gator, yeah,
I saw that this morning.
She passed away. Yeah.
She stuck to it to the end, I guess.
Honestly, though, if you think this election couldn't get any crazier,
Ruth cocked it.
Look,
she was holding out until after. She was doing her best to hold out until after the election.
I wish she'd been able to for the sake of the fucking country. Because my god, this is about to be a shit show.
Honestly, this one and your last presidential elections were just the best soap opera. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. But like, fuck me, dude. This is gonna make it so much worse.
Honestly, your election cycles are so much more interesting than ours. So much more interesting.
Get you with Trump, and you two can have all of this fun.
I haven't actually looked at like stuff lately. Is Kanye still in the mix?
No.
No, he dropped out?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
But Kanye briefly.
I really wanted to see that debate.
God. Can you imagine Trump, Kanye, and Biden fucking debate? Can you imagine, though?
I couldn't. That's why I want it. Because I can guarantee whatever I'm imagining, it would be more glorious.
Yeah, no, for sure. It would have been great, but yeah, we were robbed of that debate. I don't think we're getting I don't think we're getting any debates actually.
Why? Because seriously, like, I understand that COVID's a thing, right? Like, that's fine, but like, you can easily socially distance when you're debating. That they generally do. They're not all up in each other's faces while they're debating, unless Kanye's there, and in which case, then I can imagine, some full frontal shit happening.
Oh, are they actually debating? I'm a dumbass. Excuse me.
They are going to?
Yeah, apparently.
Is it going to be a Zoom debate or an in-person debate?
EP debates, and then there are actual debates scheduled.
I'm sorry. I like the debates. They're fun.
No, the debates are very fun. Okay, so September 29th is the first debate.
Yeah. Oh, I will say, last election cycle, the Pence and whatever the hell his name was.
I don't remember.
Theirs was a bit. Theirs wasn't fun, but the Trump-Hillary debate was fun.
God, watching Trump and Biden debate is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing,
and I can't wait. Oh yeah, but back to this one. Yeah, so Blackwell's cocked it. So, and so they've been tossing up whether or not they should have the entire tribunal recalled, or if they should get Blackwell's place in the tribunal recalled, or what. And Titus is like, there will be no recall. And then that's how he walks in. And then when they're alone, he was like, dude, you need to leave the country and you need to leave Casey here. Like, you two banged? No, excellent. We can get this shit annulled. And it's like, we've already established that they can't.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they could have just said he was impotent,
yeah, or unwillingness or whatever. There's a million. They could have, whatever. He's like, look, I'm going to release your entire trust to you. You just need to get without Casey. And he's like, why? And he's like, because if you leave and you leave without her, Ed and Robert will vote to acquit you. And then eventually you'll be able to come home. And he's like, well, when would I be able to come home? And he's like, after Casey is married to someone else and had at least one child to them.
Yeah.
And Justice is like, excuse you, no. And then while this is all happening, Justice remembers something that Brian said at the beginning of the book, which is, I wish I didn't know what I knew about Casey because someone's got to make a mother out of her. And I don't think it's going to be tough for me to rise to the occasion, if you get what I'm saying. So Justice realizes that Brian knows about all this. Like, their plan is to set Brian up with Casey because Ed wants his son to be an alpha. And Abby took that away from him. And Justice what did they get out of it aside from that as well? And he's like, well, I also have to vote to oust Rick Wade as council chair. Yeah. And that's their revenge on Abby dumping Brian. And Justice is like, no, we won't do this. And then, so then they all have a chitty chat and they work out. They come up with a plan. They have a plan. And so it's the next day. There's a council meeting to vote to bring Titus's pride into the council and make it all official and stuff. And because Ed and Robert have also said that they will vote to, in his favor. Because otherwise, that's how he was going to help vote Rick Wade out. So they do that, and they get, Titus's pride is now recognized, and I don't know what's going to happen with Jace and Abby.
Right, because are they part of Titus's pride?
They are technically, but I think with the wording, so Abby and Jace could end up going home if they're legally members of, like, citizens of the community again.
Right.
They don't really go into that, which I kind of wish we had an outcome on.
Right, because it would make more sense for, like, Jace to actually take over the pride that Abby was supposed to.
Well, but yeah, like Abby's pride.
Yeah.
And yeah, if they're allowed back into the Werecat Nation, I guess, for lack of a better term, then yeah, there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to go back to Abby's pride.
Yeah.
Which would be ideal. But then, which I'm guessing as well, then if that happens, then Casey and Justice would inherit the DeCarlo's pride then, because they don't have an heir.
Right.
Which, considering, like, Vic is, like, loves Casey, and him and Justice, until Justice broke his hand, have been pretty good buds and stuff. I don't think they'd have much argument from the DeCarlos over that. But anyway, then Ed Taylor's like, because then Gerald Pierce, now in Shifters, he was also one that was a bit of a swing vote, and seemed a bit more uncomfortable with Malone and stuff, but peer pressure and all that. And he said to Titus, because he voted against the pride being recognized, but he was like, look, I kind of just like there being 10. I probably would have voted to replace another alpha with you, but I just didn't want 11 prides. And so he showed himself to be not necessarily the worst person around.
Right.
So then when it was time, then Ed Taylor's like, I'd vote for a thingy, for a new council head, and I suppose it must be me. And Casey's sitting there watching it going, I don't know if Gerald Pierce is going to, I don't know whose side he's going to take. If he votes for Ed Taylor, then we're fucked. So then she's like, I nominate Gerald Pierce as well. And he's like, me? And Faith's like, actually, that's a great idea. You're very much a middleman, so, like, yeah, we'll do a you. And so that, like, split Ed Taylor's vote down the middle. Because some of the alphas that would have voted for him voted for Gerald instead.
Yeah.
So Rick Wade gets to stay council chair, and Ed and Robert are pissed that Titus voted for Rick. So then they're like, we vote to replace Robert and Ed Taylor because they both did a thing, and they said that they tried to blackmail Titus and threatened his brother's life and blah, blah, blah. And that motion passes. And then out of the people who get called, who was the other one?
I forget.
I think one of the, like, it was either like Wes Gardner or Marlon Mitchell or whatever.
Yeah,
one of the fucktards.
Honestly, I was zoned out during this part because I was like, I just don't care.
Yeah, so an anti-stray alpha's name gets drawn, but then Isaac Wade's name gets drawn, which is Abby's brother, Jace's brother-in-law, whatever. So then they were just like, excellent. Like, he's effectively, like, whatever. They missed a really good opportunity as well because they're going to Montana for the trial again. I really wish that they brought back Elias Keller.
Yeah.
Because that would have been
fun. But no.
Yes. But yeah, so then they're like, and then Faith is like, hey, Casey, have some car keys, and I'll see you in the morning. And she's like, where are we going? And Justice is like, it's a surprise. And they go to a motel room to bang, and the book ends.
Yep.
Because he got acquitted of all charges, and he has to, but he still has to do penance, which is a year's enforcing without pay for the South Central Pride.
So, like, unlike the other books, there's not really like a thing happening. You know, there's not like, oh, somebody's gonna die or anything like that. It's literally just like
we want to bang.
We want to bang and we have to go to a trial. And it's like I'm so bored. Like it's so boring. Cause
it was shorter than the other ones, thank goodness.
Yeah. Cause like the Shifters content wasn't a lot and it was boring. Also, it was a rehash of all sorts of we've seen so many fucking trials.
I know, right?
That I'm just like, I'm pretty sure she just took a template from whatever the fuck she wrote before and reused it. And then after that, it was like, yeah, then it was just like bad romance. Bad, unconvincing, weird romance.
Yeah, no, it was a thing. I enjoyed. My favorite book in this series was definitely Blind Tiger.
Yeah.
The Robin one.
Yeah.
This one is my least favorite.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, Lion's Share is the middle one. But that's done now.
But what we're doing next is the Morganville series.
Yes. And for those ones at the very least, we will be going back to our old
time. Ourselves. Yeah. So we can do that this week. And what day works for you? Fuck it, let's talk about it now.
Well, we want Monday or Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday will probably work best.
Done.
Or, you know, I mean, we could do Monday. Yeah, fuck it. Let's do Monday.
Okay, and what book are we doing with Addie next? What was it again? Oh, it was a standalone Jenny book, wasn't it?
Yes.
Let me just see if
it was one that you have.
Yeah, so I'm just looking to see if I've got it up. Because if I put it up, then excellent. And if I haven't, then I need to.
Yeah, but I have the first Morganville book on
Till
audio.
Death.
Okay, yeah. I have the first Morganville book on audio book. So I already have it.
Okay, I got it all. I got the whole series.
Yeah, so, but you don't, I mean, I don't have the rest of them, but the first book at least, we don't have to do a thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's what we're doing next. So Monday at 7 or 8, what are we doing?
Wait, time zones haven't changed yet, so I think.
So 8.
No,
or
no,
7?
I think you're 7 and I'm
7.
11, and then when the time zones change, it'll be 6 and midnight.
All right, so 7 a.m. on Monday. All right, cool. Fuck me. Why did I agree to this? All right,
it was your idea.
You're right. It was. Why? What is wrong?
You couldn't have had this idea, you know, at the beginning of the friendly time zone thing, because it's gonna get worse if in like what, a month?
Yeah.
In a month,
so much worse.
An hour earlier for you and an hour later for me.
but like honestly, they're better episodes. I'm sorry. Like old school book club is best book club. Look, we had some really funny moments, all right?
We did.
Mostly because we were too tired to function, which is why it worked. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna be doing. But yeah, so that's over, thank goodness.
Yep.
And yeah, so we're gonna be doing actually a good book.
Yeah, and then yeah, we'll have to talk to Addie about when we'll do Till Death.
Yeah. So that's what's coming up next. And yeah, so we will see you guys next time. Yeah.